Hi, I'm Leanne Ely. I'm a nutritionist, a New York Times best-selling author, and some people even say I'm a life coach. I started the Daily Dish Show to share my story, my truth, and my journey to vibrancy, and to inspire others to do the same. Because it's all about grit, perseverance, and finding a way despite the odds. It's about embracing the whole woman, not just the parts that are easy to love, and feeding her heart, mind, body, and soul. But I found that this isn't just my story, it's your story too. It's go time. This is the Daily Dish.
You know, I alluded to last week this positivity study that was done at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And it was a super interesting study on how it alters your brain chemistry and actually alters your health. Very, very intense study. And it was just talking about the power of positive thinking, for lack of a better word, but just how really beyond just platitudes it is, and how it absolutely 1,150,000% just changes everything, because it changes the brain synapses that we all have synapses in our brains. You know, those are those connectors. Those are the Oregon trails that we talk about. It's the stuff that we do on repeat, sometimes without even thinking. It's the way we think, sometimes without even thinking about our thinking. We've talked about that as well. But I love this whole idea that this transformation can happen with just a couple of tiny switches, with just a couple of pull the plug out of this and push the plug into that, and that we do have a whole lot more control. And one of the things that has really lit me up, and I hope that I hope this is something that you have written down, is to remember what our brains are. Our brains are just another organ in our bodies. Yes, it affects our thinking. Yes, it affects a lot of different things, but they don't run the show unless we allow them to. We get to make those choices. We get to make the call on that, because we're more than just a brain. You know, our mind and our heart, body, soul, there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into the way that we think. We release chemicals, and the chemicals that we release are either the feel-good stuff or the stuff that doesn't make us feel good, depending on what we think. So I love this so much, because it gives me it also frees me from this notion of being a victim. And it also makes me empowered, knowing there's a way to manipulate and a way to set yourself up for understanding that your brain is an organ that functions for your thinking, but that ultimately you have the power to determine the path. That's really cool. That is really cool, and it's very freeing. So Henry David Thoreau said, "Things do not change, we do." It's true. Have you ever walked outside and just said, "Oh man, I wish that house across the street would be a different color," Well, the house across the street is not going to be a different color unless the people who live in it are going to come outside and color. We cannot wish it away. Bad analogy, but the whole point is that we can't wish for anything really and expect it to happen. We have got to be verbal about it. We have got to be intentional about it, and we have to be deliberate. Always, always. Sarah says, if you set your intention before falling asleep, your brain will prep and plan the night when you're sleeping, and you'll be ready to accomplish it when you wake up. That is the truth. And this is, I did a webinar. I don't even remember what the webinar was. It was Take Back Your Life or something, but it was on using your brain waves for this. Now, what Sarah's talking about is as you go to sleep, there's delta brain waves. Delta brain waves are when you are most susceptible, because you've got your conscious brain and your subconscious brain. And the subconscious, we don't necessarily really control that as much, because, the subconscious houses a bunch of stuff that we're likely unaware of. But during the delta stage, just before we go to sleep and just before we wake up, is the most permeable. And we can plant seeds of what it is that we want. And then we can get our subconscious to start helping us. What do you think of that? Instead of having to have our subconscious constantly be pushing back on us. So that's exciting news when we understand a little bit about how the brain works. So get this. I mean, this is going to just shocker for you all, right? Psychologists tell us that the more we deliberately and purposely do the things that are all positive and good for us and positive and that trajectory, like I was talking about, to a much more positive look, sunny outlook, and life, the better we're going to do, the better we're going to feel. I'm like, duh. Of course. Of course. Nobody sits there and likes to hand wring and go through all of this stuff. That's habitual stuff. That's habitual stuff. And yeah, it could be chemically induced and all of that. And I'm certainly not going to push down and say, you're completely 100% in control of that. There are imbalances. There are brain imbalances. Like there's imbalances in your endocrine system. I know all about that. Hashimoto's here, We know about imbalances, but there's ways to bring them back into balance. And don't you think that our bodies are wise enough to figure out how to do that and to bring it back in? What if we were connected with all of this? What if we were connected all of this to all of this? So here's what I'm saying. If we connect to what our bodies are doing, and if we say and decide, I am purposely going to build a new pathway toward being more positive, and that becomes a part of what you do every single day, don't you think that's going to happen? Of course it is. Of course it is, because now it's not just, oh, well, I wish, blah, 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 and then grouse and grumble in the back of your head, push it out of the way and say, yeah, but it doesn't work that way, because your brain is constantly changing depending on the information that it's given. So if you start to change your conversation with yourself, you're going to start to change yourself and your brain. It's pretty incredible. Yeah, we are. We're always in, we do have control. We can't say the devil made us do it. Remember Flip Wilson? Anybody old enough to remember the Flip Wilson show? The devil made me do it. Well, that's what a lot of people, they fall back on, this victim mentality of, well, my brain is out of whack, or this is happening, or that's happening, or my parents are divorced. Come on. Cut me some slack. We all have to take responsibility for our lives. And when we start to take responsibility for the way we think, we can really get into the weeds. We're no longer just pushing against hope. One of the things I shared with you yesterday that I'm not a fan of AA, because they're like, hi, my name is Leanne and I'm an alcoholic, or addict or whatever it is, because it is labeling and putting yourself constantly in that place. Even if you hadn't been drinking, they want you to identify so strongly with it. That's what it's all about. The other thing that they don't do is they don't identify with the physiology. They don't talk about it. Instead, they drink a bunch of coffee, smoke a bunch of cigarettes. This is what the meetings that I've seen. And what does that do to your physiology? That's depressing. It depletes your vitamin B, which means you're not going to be able to cope. And then it becomes this white knuckle experience of trying to stay sober. Instead of feeding the physiology and feeding your brain that you can be anything that you want to be, and that you can shed this old identity and put on something new, the most depressing thing in the world to me is all of that. That's my opinion. I mean, I'm sticking with it, even though my mother was in AA for years. She was in AA for whatever years. And I was like, you're in AA? Why'd you go into AA? She had her reasons or whatever, but long story short, she was in AA and I never even saw that. But the thing is that what we think about, we are going to bring about, because that is the thing that our reticular activating system is looking for continually, constantly, always. When you put it out there, you find it. When you put it out there, you start to see it everywhere, even if you never saw it before, only because that's what you've decided to start looking for. You can do that emotionally, by the way. You can do that with people. You can do it with things. You can do it with a job. You can do it with money. You can do it with your health. You will start to find the things that you need and want and desire in your life to support yourself when you start to get rid of the old stuff that's no longer supporting you and supplant it with all the new stuff, Yeah, okay, Elizabeth, see, I support that right there. I support that. Elizabeth says, I'm in recovery and have been for 20 years, but I don't attend the meetings because I'm much more than just my addiction. I'm a recovering addict, not just an addict. Right. And also, it's not your addiction. It was an addiction that you just happened to pick up. Because I'm a firm believer. I never say my Hashimoto's. When people say my cancer, my Hashimoto's, my whatever, and they start putting tattoos all over themselves to mark themselves as such, or I am a survivor or whatever, we need to get behind all of that, don't we? We need to get in front of all of that. We need to do whatever we need to do with it. We need to identify with not just surviving, but thriving, not just recovery, but being better than. Getting the lessons out of it and moving forward. That's, to me, is a success story. And that, to me, is also living a vibrant life, not just scrapping by, not just holding on for dear life. You see what I'm saying? There is a big, big difference. So here's an example then of, if we do better and we start practicing all this and everything, what are we going to get out of this? Well, we're going to start getting, start feeling better. And we can piggyback our emotions on all of this stuff. So here's a good example of everything. When you count your blessings, you increase your gratitude. Counting your blessings is an action. Gratitude is a heart issue, in my opinion. It's not just a heart issue, but it's from the heart that you live. When you live from your heart, when you live in gratitude instead of ingratitude, ingratitude is scarcity. There's not enough. I don't get it, blah, blah, blah. Versus gratitude is there abundant thoughts, abundant everything. There's never going to be love running out for me. Love's never going to run out for me. God is always going to be enough and so much more for me. He's never going to be scarce with me and say, nah, sorry, Leah, push you away. Never. Because that's my expectation. That is the place from which I live. When we live from the place of abundance instead of the place from scarcity, we start to see things so much different because we see all that's available, half empty glass, half full glass, same idea. But that's what all of this does. So how do we do this? How do we piggyback some of this stuff? Well, it's always an action as well as a thought. There's a thought that goes with an action. There's a thought that goes with an action, and then the action feeds the thought. That's a kind of cycle that I can get behind. That's the loop that I want to be behind. So number one, how do you do this? Number one, of course, set up your environment for it. I'll tell you what. One of the things that we always, always, always do is make sure that our environment is set up for success. Now, right now, my environment on my desk is not making me a happy camper. This is my nemesis. This is the thing that I'm always, always, always dealing with. But you know what? It hasn't defeated me. It's just a tiny bit messy, and in 2 minutes, it's going to be back to where I want it. I could fold and say, oh, it's just such a mess, and I'll never get over. Oh, I'm on the struggle bus with clutter. Or blah, blah, blah. And then what happens? That's the thing that takes over. That's the thing that perpetuates. That's the thing that multiplies. It becomes more and more. It doesn't support a vibrant life. It doesn't support the vibrant life that I want. If I want visual peace, then I'm going to take the 5 minutes that I need, or the 2 minutes or whatever, to create the visual peace, because visual peace doesn't just happen like that. The thought for visual peace can happen. So number one is set up your environment for the help that you need. It should be constantly feeding you the positivity that every single brain needs and thrives from, right? This is good. Lizzie just said, sometimes the dumping of certain things is a clearing for me. We all need to dump stuff. But the problem is that we don't need to live in the dump, because the problem is so many times what happens? We leave the dump inside. We never talk about it. We never express the feelings. We have shame about it. We have guilt about it. We have whatever it is that we have about it. Whereas getting it out, this is why journaling is such an amazing thing, is going to help us. Getting it out is going to just be a relief. It's like taking a splinter out of your finger. For heaven's sakes, that little tiny piece of wood is causing so much pain. And if you leave it in, it's going to cause an infection. And if that infection goes and goes, it's going to cause an even more serious problem. You can see where all this is going. This is exactly what it is with our thoughts. If we allow our thoughts to perpetuate in that negativity, it's like an overflowing septic tank. It's like the blister in your finger. It's just not going to work. So we work over into this different place of, okay, so how do I set this all up? Well, daily, you set up your environment. Your environment will help you. It will not hinder you if it's set up correctly and it's positive. Number 2, emotionally piggyback some of these things. So again, that emotional piggyback is the thought, the gratitude, the attitude of gratitude. You've heard that before. I think Sarah just said, it is just the thing. It's the thing that lights you up. It is the thing that lights you up. And when you've got this little bit of gratitude in your heart and you express it, you want to underscore it, then you tell somebody about it. You say, you know what, Sarah, your comments, every time I see this, it just really lights me up. It really encourages me. Or, you know what, Lily, when you tell me that you should not identify the illnesses and shortcomings, it makes you feel like a victim, feeling bad. You are so right. Thank you for saying that. Michelle, beauty in my life inspires me. Me too. You see how that does? That's a connection. It's a connection, and it's a connection. When we connect with our emotions with an action and we connect with others by underscoring in our community, what happens? We build strong synapses in our brains that show us that this encouragement, this positivity really does build that vibrant life. It's part of the whole bridge thing. We talked about all the bridges. We all have gaps. The gaps are the gaps are the gaps. So what? We are in the bridge building business. We come into this life with a hammer and nails in our hands, ready to build. But for some of us, we say, I don't know how. It's a struggle. I wasn't born that way. I'm not a good builder. I don't know, what to do. I'm going to put it down. I'm going to hope that it gets built. I'm going to wish that it gets built. I'm going to envy others who are building and I'm not. Do you see how all of this just takes away where all the other stuff builds and adds to? That's what positivity is. It is a builder of a beautiful life. So that's what we need to do. We need to emotionally piggyback to create the momentum. That's what we do. So for example, hope. When we talk about hope and we share our hope with somebody, we lift someone up, don't we? We lift someone up. I've had so many people instant message me or ask me, you've seen it probably if you watch Q&A, what did you do about Hashimoto's? How did you get beyond it? Because I never say that I'm cured simply because, I'd be shut down by everyone. And I still take thyroid medication. I have, bioidentical thyroid medication, but I've got eyebrows. I've got hair. I lost the weight. I feel better. I've got energy. I don't ache all over. My doctor said, you are in remission. And he did that like 4 years ago. So that's where I'm going to live. And I'm going to share that story. I'm going to encourage somebody else. I am going to show someone there is hope. I wrote Part-Time Paleo. That was all about that. This is what it's about. We share our hope. We lift others up. And when we're lifting others up, we're lifting ourselves up as well. It's exciting for me to share that story. It's exciting for me to share that story because I know if they listen, they're going to get some help. I'm not going to guarantee what their results are going to be, but they will get better. They'll get a little bit better. Just how all this works. Oh my goodness. Anyway, that's how that whole thing works. It's same with confidence. Just, some of us have a teeny tiny bit of confidence, just this little bit, and we timidly tiptoe into the Hot Melt Sprint group and we say, I lost 5 pounds or whatever. Well, let me just say that little teensy bits of confidence, brag on yourself, sister. Do it. And we're all going to come behind you and say, what a gal. Look at you. That's fabulous. Building, building, building. Not only are you building up yourself, you're building up others and sharing a little bit of your life, sharing a little bit of confidence builds others up. Do you see how this works? This connection is absolutely unbreakable. This is how we're built. We're built for connection. It's in our DNA. And all of this stuff, when we connect to the positive stuff, That's how we lift each other up. It's that rising tide, right? So number 3 is think. Are you ready for this? How do I create more of this? Our positivity can just proliferate like baby mice, you know? It can proliferate and proliferate and proliferate when we just keep planting those seeds. This is your garden. This is your garden for your life. This is your determination on what it is that you want to cultivate. A little bit more, plant another seed. A little bit more, water it. A little bit more, watch for the weeds, because I promise you they'll show up. A little bit more sun, more positivity, more lifting up. So this is the type of positivity that broadens our base of optimism, and it squeezes out the negativity, and it opens the door for possibility. We don't have any possibility doors opening when we're negative Nellies. Nobody wants to be around that. You know, wah, wah, Debbie Downer. Remember her in Saturday Night Live? Who wants to be around that? Not me, not you. Even if you are the Debbie Downer. If we start unplugging this stuff, like it's, you know, like the appliance is bad, unplugging it and making decisions to plug into the right thing, then we're going to start feeding the right thing. When it's fed, it's happy, and that positively grows. So this can transform everything. You ready? I've got 7 things for the transformation. This that I'm talking about, emotionally piggybacking this type of positivity and having the thought, the emotion, and the action. This is what it will do. This is how it's going to transform you. First of all, it's going to transform your thoughts. Remember we talked about knee-jerk thoughts last week and what a pain in the neck they are, right? I almost said a pain in the you know what, but yeah, it is. They are, because what does it do? It just knocks out all the positivity, and it keeps us away and from all of the things that we want. So the knee-jerk thoughts, KJTs, less and less and less. Thank God. Number 2, it gives us our health, because we surge with the healthy chemicals. We surge with that. Our bodies know the difference between negativity and healthy, you know? And number 3, it helps with us coping and the overwhelm that we feel. If we walk around constantly saying, oh, this overwhelm is killing me, it's going to. It will. You're telling your body what to do. You're giving your body the signal, hey, bad chemicals, go get it. But no, if we are really aware that everything that we say is picked up and received by our body and then chemically induced by the result of the words, then we're going to start changing that out. We're going to start changing that out. And that helps with it helps us too with with our coping mechanisms. We suddenly are going to stop saying these things, recognizing that if we do otherwise, we are setting ourselves up for unsuccess. Number 4 is resilience. You know, the resilient, and I would say flexible. Blessed are the flexible, they will not be broken. When you're resilient, you can handle things. You're like a duck with the water going off your back. You can handle things. You stop freaking out and saying, oh, I'm on the struggle bus, I can't do that. I had a friend once upon a time, every single time I made a suggestion for something, yeah, but I can't, and this, that, and the other thing. And then she called, do you have a minute? And I knew what that meant. It always meant I'm going to sit there and I'm going to bitch and moan my fool head off. You heard me. Because that is a sign of someone with no resiliency in their life and no coping mechanisms put into place. And also an unwillingness to put any in. Do you think she's still a friend of mine? No. I've wished her well and moved along. I can't do that. I'm not going to be her bucket for her trash, you know? Number 5 is are you ready? Better relationships. Can you imagine? If all you're doing is nagging and whining and saying you always to your husband and you make a decision not to do this anymore, what is that going to do to your marriage? How is that going to build it? How is that going to add to it? There's going to be something that's going to suddenly say, wow, you know, when you look for the positive, in everyone and bring that out and just shut your trap about all the negative stuff. I don't care how deep your history is. I don't care if you've been married 50 years. At any point, you can make a decision to love, support, encourage, and be positive to that person who's on the other end of your kitchen table. It's a needle mover. This is a needle mover, and it will improve relationships like nothing else. Number 6, it'll make your job better and more enjoyable. I will never forget when the last time I had a real job, believe it or not, was in the 80s, you guys, in the 80s. And I was a sales rep for a title insurance company. And every time I'd come in, there was always this gal who sat at the desk and, how are you? Oh, blah, 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 woof, 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 negative, negative, negative. And she's poisoned the office. They finally got rid of her. She poisoned the office. She was always gossiping, always bringing things down, always this, always, never a positive thing to say. And it pollutes the water. You've seen clean water and then somebody just starts throwing trash in it. It just putrefies. That's what happens in an office. So when you are adding to the conversation of good stuff, your job is going to be better. When you make a decision, I'm no longer going to, yammer about my job. I'm going to be positive about it. You're going to start to like it a little better too. And if you're in a positively toxic environment, well, then you know what to do. You got to go find a new job or whatever. But the point is, do you want more happiness and joy in your life? Everything isn't at the end of the world, everything isn't when you choose to be positive. And number 7, this is the biggie. Satisfaction with life, even when the going gets tough. Well, and this is the place that we diminish, by the way. We diminish the hard stuff instead of having the long yarns of talking about all the negative stuff that happened when over here all the positive stuff happened. Let's leave that alone and go into the positivity and allow life to fully bloom before our eyes. Fully bloom. Because, everything in our lives there's going to be big things in our lives and there's going to be smaller things in our lives. When we make the small stuff big, and especially the small, big stuff big, then that's the thing that becomes the dominant force. We can become and be and have all the goodness and all the richness and all the vibrancy that we want in our lives if only we flip the switch and start being the positive women that we're born to be. This is our birthright. This is our birthright. But you're the one that needs to hold on to it. You're the one that needs to make a decision that you're going to hold onto it with both hands. And if there's things that we've talked about today that need to be let go, well, you know what to do. It's time. So there you go, my friends. Velcro for the positive, Teflon for the negative. Right on. That's right on, Sarah. I love that. I might have to put that in the quote deck. You, my lovely, are fearfully and wonderfully made, dearly loved and highly treasured. I know who wrote that. That's Jenny. That was good stuff. Thank you so much for being here, by the way. I do not take it for granted. You are part of the blessings that I count every single day, and my gratitude is overflowing and abundant. It's because of you. So much appreciate you. Thanks for joining me today, and thanks for being a part of this community. You light it up. Peace be with you. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for joining me today. You can find me on TikTok for daily tips to help support your most vibrant life. And remember, you are the author of your own story. Until next time.